So I want to read for you a little bit out of Corinthians. This is the first letter that Paul wrote to the Corinthians. If you're not up and on your Bible, Paul wrote 2 letters to the Corinthians because the Corinthians had a hard time getting it right. And Paul loved them so much that he put a lot of energy into them. So this is the first of the letters that he wrote. This is chapter 8. And he's talking to the new Christians among that community. He says, now concerning food, which has been sacrificed to idols, we know that all of us possess knowledge. Knowledge puffs up, but love builds up. Anyone who claims to know something does not yet have the necessary knowledge, but anyone who loves God is known by him. So this is some things going on in his community that he's addressing. There are some people in the community who think they know some things, and Paul's trying to distinguish what they think they know and what he thinks he knows. Now, Paul has seen Jesus, and these other people have not. So he's trying to separate them. He goes on to say, hence, as to eating food offered to idols, we know that no idol in the world really exists, and that there is no God but one. Indeed, even though there may be so-called gods in heaven or on earth, as in fact there are many gods and many lords, yet for us there is one God, the Father, from whom all things and for whom all exist, the one Lord, Jesus Christ, through whom are all things and through whom we exist. It is not everyone, however, who has this knowledge, since some have become so accustomed to eating food that has been offered to idols that their conscience is being weak and defiled. Food will not bring us closer to God. We are no worse off if we do not eat, and no better off if we do. But take care that this liberty of yours does not somehow become a stumbling block for the weak. So what Paul's talking about here is, in a world where everybody worshipped idols, the only time you would have ever had meat is if some animal had been sacrificed to that god, that idol. And if you had done that, if you had actually eaten the meat, then you would have known that you would have done it in front of this idol. And the reason you would have done it is because that's really the only way things happen in this world. So if you're a tradesperson and you want to have a contract, there's no legal system that you can appeal to if somebody doesn't hold up their end of the bargain. So what do? You go and you get yourself a goat, and you go in front of one of these idols, in front of one of these false gods, and you sacrifice the goat as a covenant. Basically saying if you don't hold up your end, then that God's going to come and get you. And then you kill the goat or whatever it is that you brought, and then you cook it, and then you share it with everybody else. Or if there's a celebration, you would go and do the same thing to that false god. Or if you wanted that god to get into your world or help something out, right, you would go and get a goat and do it this way. So the only time you had meat was when it was sacrificed to an idol, which doesn't look like our world. I've been to Publix. I looked. There is nowhere an idol sacrifice meat section. I found one. I tried to look. I didn't find anything. So what does it look like to have idols? Because we still have idols in our world. Back in the day, it would have been easy enough to know what an idol is, but we still have them today in our world. And so today I want to talk about sports, because we find ourselves in this really interesting position where next week is Super Bowl Sunday. And we just had what was almost a really great Sunday last week, except for maybe the last, 4 minutes or so. Yeah, it was great if you're a Patriot fan. Okay, so I want to talk about sports. Now, if you're thinking, oh, no, whole sermon about sports. Okay, look, I understand that what I'm going to preach on today may not convict you. Now, what does it mean to be convicted? Conviction is a Christian term where you hear or you see something that you understand to not be good, that is a sin, and then you recognize that in your life. Somebody is talking about something, and then you recognize, you're convicted that you are making that sin. Maybe you're not going to be convicted when I start talking about sports because you're not a sports fan. Well, don't let your pride cause you to stumble. Maybe you can apply this to other arenas in your life. And I'm not rebuking you. If you heard in our reading today, Jesus rebuked the demon, right? What did he do? He called it out by name, and he said, you demon, you're an evil thing. Get out of here. I'm not doing that. I'm not rebuking you. What I need you to hear is my confession. This is a confession that I'm bringing to you today because we're in sports country, y'all. right? We got Seminoles to the west of us, and Gators to the south of us, and Jaguars all around. And I think there's some, I don't know, some rabid bulldog somewhere. And there's a red tide. I don't know. I don't understand it. It's not something I want to bring up, but there's somewhere around here. And I come from football country. I come from Columbus, Ohio. To the north we got Brownies. To the south we got Bengals. And in Columbus, Ohio, we have national champions, perennial national champions. Every year we're looking to take that. And what happened was, to me, remember this is my confession, y'all. A few weeks ago I was at a wedding of a member. And as I'm sitting there having dinner, a song comes on. And before I realize what's going on is I pop up to this song. And I am chanting along and I can't stop myself. H-I. Oh, there's my Buckeyes. We got Buckeyes in here. Woo-hoo-hoo. Yeah. And I'm sitting there, and the whole song, I'm doing the calisthenics. You think it was the YMCA. And at the end of the song, I'm standing up, and there's my wife sitting down. And I'm wondering who am I dancing with? Okay, so it was like this involuntary thing, this song. This is a chant from many years ago. This is 50 years old, this song is at Ohio State. And like somebody hit my knee. I stood up, and I started chanting this song. I couldn't help myself. So you need to hear that this is a confession. I am proud of my heritage. I'm third generation Buckeye graduate. Sometimes people say, oh, well, we're part Irish, or we're 50 part Italian and 65 part German, or whatever. I don't tell my kids that. I tell them, we're Midwesterners. That's what I tell them. This is what I do, because this is who I am. So I don't want you to hear anything about sports accusatory or rebuking. You need to hear, this is a confession, and maybe you can get with me on this. Because Paul tells us in a few chapters after the one I just read, in chapter 10, he says, we should flee, dear friends, flee from the worship of idols. You cannot drink from the cup of the Lord and the cup of demons. Well, this isn't hypothetical. This isn't symbolic. Every Sunday at this table, we drink. Okay, we put the little bread in the cup because, there's hundreds of us. It would take a while to drink. And who knows who drinks a lot and who doesn't drink a lot. So we don't. But we can't walk up here and take communion and just go through the motions. Because what happens is if you come up here and you take communion, you go through the motions, and then the rest of the day or the rest of the week, you go seeking money or sex or sports or power or beauty or climbing the corporate ladder or seeking the praise of others by liking on Facebook, you may be given glory to something other than God. That is the definition of idolatry, and that is an offense to God. This communion that we're given isn't just something to fill time on Sunday. This baptism that we're given makes us children of God. It's not just a way to get wet on a Sunday. In Corinth, it would have been really easy to see the idols. You would have found a building with these colonnades, and you would have had to walk into the building, and inside that building would have been some engraven image, and it would have been very clear. These are the idols. But in our world, it's not so clear what really is an idol. We don't have engraven images so much that we can point to and say, aha, there, that's the thing. But nonetheless, our idols are very real. Anything that has been created that we give glory to, that should be God's is idolatry. Anything that's created, by definition, isn't the creator. So anything that's created is by necessity only good as another creature could use it. It's not good to be our God. It's never going to be our God. It can't be. Now see, the thing is, God made everything, and everything that God made is good, which means everything that God made has a little bit of goodness in it. Our bodies are good. It is enjoyable that we should enjoy them. It's a good thing that we should make good with them. That we might compete with each other is a natural thing, and that some people might hone that physical skill into sport is a beautiful thing. If you've ever played golf, you know how frustrating golf can be. Yes, it is. It can be very frustrating. And if you ever tried to make a shot and shape a shot around a tree and it went the other way and into the forest or into the water, it can be maddening. I tell you though, golf is magical. It is magical for everybody, whether you play it or not. Just watch, just listen. If you play the sport and you know how frustrating golf can be, then when you watch a master tee off and shape it around some dog leg, you are just in awe of that ability. Now, if you don't play golf, when he hits it off the tee and it goes to the right, it'll probably put you to sleep. That's just as magical. The problem with sport is not that it's a problem. It doesn't have to be a problem. Sports, by necessity, aren't idolatry. There's nothing that has to be an idolater nature in sport. Our bodies are wonderful gifts from God. Our lives are a gift from God. We should enjoy them in all of the ways that God gave us. There are people who find it very joyful to sled down icy slides head first. They're going to the Olympics for it. Great, that's wonderful. If you've dedicated your life to, I don't know, slinging stones on ice, then good. I don't know why, but good for you. That's great. There are people who are really good at silly things. If it makes you happy, continue doing it. The problem isn't if it makes you happy, it's if it takes away from God and becomes your God. That's when it goes wrong. And we do this in other arenas. Our society worships beauty. There's entire channels on your television right now devoted to talking about who is the next starlet, who is the next whatever. And they're going to show you what they're wearing on some red carpet somewhere in Hollywood. And people will, and we will, set our entire lives to emulating whatever it is that they wore. We put a lot of energy into our society to buy the clothes that make us look good, to buy the surgeries to make us look good, to buy the diets that make us look good, to buy the makeups that make us look good. And that's all right until it is that you have decided that beauty equals value. As soon as you decide that a person's worth has anything to do with what you see, that's vanity. Vanity means that someone's value is based on something that has nothing of value. That's idolatry. I know that one well. That's my sin. Because the greater the good, everything has good, but some things have even greater good. And the greater the good that those things have, that God has invested in those things, the easier it is to turn those things into idols. Good things can never be God. But we try. Tom Brady, who's going to be in the Super Bowl, I think it's his 63rd Super Bowl, was in an interview a couple years ago, and they were talking, Tom Brady and the guy who was interviewing them. And Tom Brady said, there's something missing from my life. Something missing from Tom Brady's life. Can you imagine? The man has won 4 Super Bowls. 4 Super Bowls. He's married to a supermodel. He has made millions on top of millions of dollars, and he is not the breadwinner in his house. His wife makes more money than him. They want for nothing. And he tells this interviewer, there's something missing in my life. Tom, I know what's missing in your life. You've turned football into your God. And no matter how good that good is, it's never going to be good enough. So how do you know? How do you know if you've fallen into idolatry? This is not an exhaustive list. This is just a couple of ideas. The first is, does it take away from God? Does the thing that you're doing pull you away from God? When push comes to shove, who wins? Okay, now here's my confession, right? I told you this is my confession. Last week, on Sunday, I found myself not in church. Yeah, my family won. My in-laws won. I'm going to blame it on them. Okay. Is that a sin? Okay, yeah, I think maybe it is. Because what happened was, I know better than that. Is that the horrible, most worst thing in the world? No. But let me tell you why that's a problem. Because as soon as you have one Sunday where you don't worship, you know what happens the next Sunday? It's that much easier. You know what happens the next Sunday? It's that much easier. See, we like to think that dogs are easily trained. Humans are even more easily trained. And as soon as we get out of those habits, it's hard to get back into those habits. And we have all kinds of excuses to tell us why our new habit is better than the one that we've traded it for. All right, now here's another one. I'm going to get sexist here for a second. Gentlemen, I'm going to talk to gentlemen. This is my sexist moment here. Gentlemen, talk to your wives. Ask them, when your team loses, where's your mood? Are you happy and go lucky? Is everything great and dandy and fine? Or wives, do you know that if their team loses, maybe you need to give them an hour or a day or a week? Right? So here's what's interesting though. If there's a sports team that you're giving so much power to that it can control your mood, why would you do that? Why would you give anybody anything, the ability to control your mood? Because your mood dictates how you interact with people. Those are your relationships. Why would you give something that isn't God the ability to influence your relationship? Did you mean to do that? Did you mean to let your relationships fall or be tested? Maybe your wife is awesome and she knows and she's okay with it and she's going to give you your space, but maybe when you go to the grocery store and you rip the head off the bagger because they gave you paper instead of plastic, maybe that guy's going to have a really bad day now because of something as simple as your love going to the wrong thing. Does it divert your resources? The SEC, the Southeastern Conference, that's the football conference that we live within. The SEC has a budget in 2016 of $800 million. That's more than 25 other nations in the world. And that's just one conference. There's more and bigger and better conferences. Or are they worse and more evil? When you have those moments where your mind can wander, you're washing the dishes, you're walking the dog, you're doing the laundry, whatever it is, your everyday kind of things, and your mind wanders, where does your mind go? Does it go to your sports team? If it does, maybe it is that's taking away, because you could be using that mind power, that kind of fluff time, right? That could be going to other things. I'm saying that you have to be whole-mindedly focused on one thing always, but it's just a simple little question to help maybe get at the idea that you and I and other people in this world have fallen victim into what has become idolatry, which is not anywhere we want to be. So what can you do? If you found yourself there and you recognize that there's these things, what can you do? The first is don't give it power. Redirect that power. Don't give it power. Don't give in to what's going on. So what we do at this congregation is we tap into it. Lutherans, for hundreds of years, have been taking power that the world has created and using it for Jesus' purpose. From the very beginning, Martin Luther took beer-drinking songs, the songs that everybody knew in the bar, changed the words, and brought them to the church. And then, when all the men were dragged to worship, you know what happened? They found all the songs they liked. We have been doing this for hundreds of years. So what are we doing here at Crossroad? It's not an accident that our chili cook-off happens today. Today is the lull between the playoffs that have just happened and the Super Bowl that's about to come. And so we're having our Super Bowl chili cook-off, right? Who's got the best bowl? Well, of course, Pastor Ryan's is the best. No, I don't see any hands. Everybody agrees with me. All right. No, I don't see anything. So, but you see, this is the purpose. Last year, we were doing a mission trip. So we raised funds so that we might be able to go out and spread the message of God to people in the world. This year, our mission isn't a mission trip. Our goal here is to raise funds for the National Youth Gathering. We've got a lot of youth who want to go. This is an expensive endeavor. But this is exactly what the church is supposed to do, which is to build our youth up. Look, y'all, there's a real war being waged out there right now, and it has nothing to do with statistics on some green field somewhere else in the world. Those statistics mean nothing in eternity. You know what means something? High school. that is a jungle. And what do we want for our children, except that when they're going through that jungle, there might be a path, that there might be a signpost, that there might be something to guide them along the way. This is that signpost. The National Youth Gathering will be with our youth for the rest of their life, and they will make bonds on this trip that they didn't think that were strong enough, and those bonds will guide them through the difficult and trying times. And they'll see that their congregation is supporting and guiding them in the way of our Lord, which is exactly what God has called us to do. How can we do that? We use the power that might be used for idolatry for God's kingdom, which is why we have this Super Bowl challenge, so that we might be able to make something special out of what might also be something evil, but instead we're going to do something great with it. So I hope that you stick around. I hope that you buy some tickets and you put them all into my jar or whoever's jar. I don't want to know. Idols only have power if you give them power. All of these things that are good and very good can be used for God, and we will do exactly that. Because to God be the glory forever and ever. Amen.